Jeremy, what do you think? We go into the conclusion now, or we can kind of leave things
No,
there?
we can. We'll wrap it up at the end because I think there's a ton to talk about. And even as you were just going through the summary, it jumped out at me how I think we can all recognize the early, like the premature sexualization that whatever is it, Western culture, capitalism, like what it is. But we've all walked through the street and seen like a 12-year-old girl who is just dressed in like the most, I sound like a 90-year-old man, but just like she's trying to look like she's 17 and like be pretty and wear lots of makeup and like wants to be sexualized by older men. And there's just so much mired in that. Like we could literally talk for an entire podcast about like why that's so fucked up and how that comes to be. And this is, I know we like to think about it as a modern thing because everyone sees on Instagram these models and on TikTok, everyone's bouncing around in their Lululemon leggings or whatever. But clearly,
you do sound like a 90-year-old man.
Bro, I'm literally
bouncing around in their
right now,
Lululemon sweatpants.
Yeah, I mean, but my point is that this shit has been happening for 70 years. He wrote this book 70 years ago. So it's very clearly a commentary on like this happens, this premature it's not even I mean it's obviously exploitation, but they're doing it for themselves because they want to be like why is the girl, why is she dressing up as a to look like a 17-year-old would look like? What is it that's missing or that she wants, that she desires, that's causing her to shed this chastity, this purity? And I guess maybe it's natural, like we all want to be kind of older when we're younger, and then as you get older you want to be younger, so it's just like at one point it flips.
Yeah, right around my age, your age. I think we're at the verge. We're in the dream state right now.
Yeah, like that little in between episode. But yeah, so I guess it's just like that sexualization. And one thing that I also wanted to add on was so like when Humber and Lolita, she's 12 years old, they have sex. When you imagine that in your head, and by the way, the word was nymphette, like Nymph, like a nymph in Greek literature. And he just makes, I've never heard the word nymphette before.
I think he made the word up, but I think it actually like became like a word that people would use afterwards.
Yeah, which is weird. Just out here inventing words.
You're my nymphette.
You just add it on to the list. Maybe that's next Halloween. I'll get like a little tutu.
You can be a nymphette. Yeah, you should dress up as Lolita for Halloween.
Oh, so are you Humbert then?
I would be your Humbert. We could travel through the country. Honestly, in San Francisco, people would be like, "You guys go, little Lolita cosplay."
If Gary Oldman listens to this episode, then I will dress up as Lolita, and you can be for Halloween this season, 2023. You heard it here first. Good scribes only. So the little thing that I just wanted to add on was that you imagine it to be this like grotesque, forceful endeavor, at least from our perspective, what we hear. Humbert, he's not like holding her down and tying her up and doing weird sadistic shit. He's kind of manipulated her to the point where she's a 12-year-old and wants to be kind of promiscuous, and B, trapped and doesn't see it as that bad of a thing, which like in a lot of ways is just way worse because she sort of elects to be in this situation.
Well, the only place I'd push back there, and you probably know where I'm going with this, is again, like this is how Humbert tells us this, but I think we have a lot of reason to suspect that his account has a lot of holes in it and his memory is very imperfect. There are multiple places in the book where he confuses things and can't get timelines right. The book is filled with amazing coincidences that don't fully add up. There's other like in that scene, you're right. He makes it very clear that she initiated the sexual contact and that, you know, this was like a very blissful interaction. But like a few pages later, we get reference that she was crying nonstop. So, and he says that passively. And I think all of this points to, one, the nature of an unreliable narrator who's literally writing from an insane asylum, right? Mm-hmm. So how much we could actually believe here is very questionable. And two, I think there's a part of the book where, you know, he says that Lolita has been solipsized, essentially, right? And it's like he has completely removed any humanity from this character and even given her a name that was just his. There's a quote later in the book where he says to other people she was Dolores or Doe or these other nicknames, but to me she was Lolita. She's like, she doesn't even exist as a person in his narrative. All she is an object of his desires who completely exists. Like her whole reason of being is just to fulfill his sexual needs and his aesthetic needs, as he would term them, right? And in that sense, we get a very imperfect understanding of what Lolita was actually going through. Like, if you read this book, it seems like that Lolita's mom died and she was like pretty much okay with that, and then would jokingly say, "You're raping me," or "You're assaulting me." But overall, like through all the gifts, they would move through the country, and even at the end of the book, we'll go into that scene later, but says he was a good dad. Like, that's what we're getting. But if you just take like the hard facts of what's happening here, you have a 12-year-old girl whose mother dies under suspicious circumstances, whose stepdad picks her up from camp after really only knowing him for what, 3 to 6 months at that point, and then takes her away from the home where she grew up to sleep in motels across the country. Like, we're talking, like, I think my life is bad right now with my work fires. This is a different level of horrible, right? Like, I couldn't even imagine going through this. But all we ever hear from her through him is the occasional tantrum, or you know how little girls are, they'll scream a tantrum and be annoyed about stuff. It's like, this woman's life, this girl's life is fucking awful. And we don't get any insight into how awful it is.
Yeah, he's just fundamentally, like you said, an object of his desire. She's an object of his control. You know, he just fundamentally owns her. He put her in a box and just neatly packs her in his suitcase and carries her around from landmark to landmark through the United States like she were a dog. She's literally like his little pet. And they're going to see these amazing, they go to like Mount Rushmore, and they're going through all these like national parks and things like that. And just, he convinces himself that he's giving her this wonderful educational experience, taking her away from school, which he didn't like, and the teachers didn't like her. And then he sleeps with her and just like defiles her and controls her in the most like fundamentally manipulative sense that leaves her. I do think that she has, this is where we diverge a little bit. Like, I think that he is just so smart and manipulative and kind of like sociopathic that he is just basically convinced her that if she went to the authorities, she would get put in like a horrible group home that she would absolutely hate. And he builds that up about like how bad they are and how terrible, and like, look at these gifts I'm giving you, and we're going to these amazing places, and like, I'm controlling, but I give you freedom to act and play tennis and stuff like that. And so she's like, okay, I'll hang around with this guy. And like, we all know that happens in real life too. You know, like, men can be very controlling, women can be controlling too, but like, it tends to be the male who sort of like twists the relationship into something that the woman feels like they can't escape, or it's like, oh, this is good for me.